If you are a fan of the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast and would like to help support the show, there's a great way that you can do that and start a new fashion trend. We have a new merchandise page on the website which features t-shirts and hoodies that are available for sale on Amazon. Just click on merchandise in the top menu and all of the links will be there, or go directly to divebarrockstar.com/merchandise. Get started early on your Christmas shopping at divebarrockstar.com. Welcome to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, a show exploring the lives of professional musicians of all types, touring musicians, recording artists, songwriters, engineers, bar bands, wedding bands, and anyone making their living in the music industry. Whether you've dreamed of being a professional or you already are one, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Eric Baines, and I hope that you not only find some entertainment here, but also some helpful tips, trade secrets, and ideas that will help you achieve your dreams. It's the week of Thanksgiving 2020, and of course, the coronavirus is on attack worse than it's ever been. And, I know it's different in different places. I happen to live in Los Angeles, which we have the most cases right now, but we're also the biggest county in all of the U.S. and bigger than a lot of other parts of the world as well. So it's tricky. But and it's also hard to make the decision between seeing family and trying to avoid this disease that's been confusing at best, to figure out. But I hope everybody stays healthy and safe and has an awesome holiday, because I do think there's still quite a bit to be thankful for, and things could always get worse. So, it's the season of gratitude, and that's never a bad thing. But there's a new documentary coming out, and for those of you that know me personally, I call myself a documentary junkie because I love them. So I'm excited. And the documentary is about Frank Zappa. Comes out this week. So we are going to call this Franksgiving. I stole that from my guest, but I think it's awesome. My guest today has been the Vaultmeister, quote unquote, for the Frank Zappa Vault for many, many years. And he's helped to put together the soundtrack for this movie, which was written and directed by Alex Winter, who you may know as Bill from the Bill and Ted movies. I've only seen the trailer, but it looks incredible. So I'll put a link in the show notes to the trailer, and you can find the movie on demand, and maybe in the theaters if there's still theaters open in your area. My guest is also an incredible drummer who has played with so many great people like Dweezil Zappa, Ahmet Zappa, Duran Duran, Joe Satriani, Missing Persons, The Motels, Steve Vai, and a band that I played with called Waiting for Monday that you've probably heard a lot about on the show, just to name a few. And he's a great guy with a great story. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Joe Travers. Much of your career has revolved around, obviously, the music of Frank Zappa.
Yes.
And I was wondering, how did you get to that music? When did you first hear that music? And what happened to you that you decided to kind of dedicate your entire life and career, in a way, to Frank Zappa and his music?
Well, it started when I was 10 years old in 1979. Yeah, I was 10 in 1979. And my main source of music exposure around that time was my family. So I had an uncle who was 10 years older than me, who was my father's brother. And he was, if I was 10, he was 20. And also my mom and dad were, listening to music a lot and stuff. My dad was a drummer and he was playing music. So I was getting exposed to a lot of different stuff at a very, very early age, right? Mm-hmm. And my uncle, basically it was like this. I was hanging out at a friend's place, and his name was Richie, and he had an older brother, and his older brother used to play college radio. And it was like a Saturday afternoon, and I remember we were just hanging out at the house, and he had the college radio going. Now, college radio in Erie, Pennsylvania was the station that would allow for album tracks. You know, it wasn't like the regular pop AM stuff that you would normally hear.
Right.
So, and the song City of Tiny Lights came on from the album Shake Your Booty. And when it came on, I just remember just stopping everything and walking over to the stereo and just listening, going like, wow, this is interesting. What the hell is this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then the DJ said, that was Frank Zappa with City of Tiny Lights from the new album, Shake Your Booty, you know?
Wow.
And I was like, Frank Zappa, I'd never heard of him, you know? So I went back to my uncle, who, like I told you, was the main source of my, you know, musical exposure at that time. And I said, who's Frank Zappa? You know, I heard this song. It was pretty cool. Who's Frank Zappa? And he, at first he was like, oh, that's just a guy who likes to yell at his audience, which is hilarious. But Gary ended up getting that record, Shake Your Booty. And when I heard that, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with that record, but, you know, when you're 10 years old and you hear songs like Bobby Brown and Broken Hearts Are for Assholes and Yo Mama and stuff like that, the humor and the words and stuff would just like, it was a full-on mind blower. And me being a drummer at such an early age, I knew, even though it was like way above my head, you know, I knew that the music was special. I just knew it at that young age, right? Mm-hmm. So my curiosity just went crazy. And as I got older, I just really wanted to just learn more about him and just about his music. And the more that I kept getting the records and stuff, the more that I just kept falling in love with it. Like the world of Frank was just like it was like a world that was just sucking me in. Right. And one of the things too that was challenging at that point, this would have been like the early 80s, like 1981, 82, around there and stuff. And most of his records were out of print. You couldn't get them. They were rare, you know, especially the 60s stuff. You know, there was no way you could get that shit. So the only way that you could get it is if you like ran across a sealed copy that had been sitting in a record store forever, or you got them used, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a challenge for me to collect the records because that made it even more mystifying for me. Like, I want this stuff so bad and I can't get it, right? And there was no internet. So that made it even more like, you know, like a thing where I just wanted to just start getting into it. So I literally fell in love. And I mean, simultaneously, I was discovering so much other music too, right? But Frank just kept on being that guy that kept just grabbing my attention. And I just kind of fell into it, man. You know, I just kept falling in love with everything that I heard. And then when you look at the catalog and you're like, holy shit, at that time it was like, there's like 50 records. Yeah. You know, and you're like, holy shit, there's 50 records I could check out of this guy. That's like a lifetime of listening. You know? I better get moving.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, you know, the time that it would take to make one song on one of those records. And then you've got 50, I think it's 56 records altogether.
Well, now we're at 120 or something like that. It's unbelievable, the amount of releases that we have. But by the time that he had passed, he was in the 60s. He had like 62 or something like that, something around there, you know, something like that. And I mean, yeah, he had an unbelievable work ethic, and you know, music was his life, and so it doesn't surprise me that he was releasing like 3 records, you know, a year sometimes, you know, because his output was insane.
Wow, that's incredible. You started playing with Z first, is that right?
Yes, I got the gig with Ahmet and Dweezil Zappa's band about 6 months after I moved to Los Angeles in 1993. I you know, went to Berklee College of Music, and I totally just immersed myself in different styles and just wanted to be a better player and really kind of just prepare myself for you went to Berklee too, right?
I did. Yeah. We might have overlapped by a semester. I was there like 91 to 93.
Yeah. So, I mean, that time in Boston was really good for me. There was a lot of benefits. It was super beneficial for me at that time to interact with the musicians and learn different styles of music. And And I had set the goal, like, I'm going to graduate. Like, most people were just like, I'm just going to go and check it out. And then they just bailed. Most guitar players went there just because Steve Vai went there. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I set the goal. Like, I was like, I am going to graduate. Like, I'm going to do this program and I'm going to get it done. And then I'm going to go out to LA and just, and then just whatever happens, happens. Well, the timing was pretty amazing because by the time I got there, they were looking for a drummer. So I just, because I had met Mike Keneally in Boston while I was going to Berklee, we had kept in touch the entire time that I was getting ready to make that transition. And so when I moved to LA, Keneally told Dweezil, he was like, hey, do you remember that drummer, Joe Travers, that I told you about or whatever? And he said, yeah. And he said, well, he lives out here now, and he said, well, dude, have him come down and audition. So it just happened, it just came together like that. And I got the gig. That was in 1993, and I haven't looked back,
Wow. In 6 months, that's pretty good.
It's not bad. I was like so hungry, man. I was going for it. Like, I was trying so hard to get my name around and just play. You know how it is, And this is back when there's, like, again, no YouTube, no internet, no way to have that kind of social networking. So I was the guy who was like walking around town with a friggin' press kit with a headshot and a VHS tape with my playing and a little bio and all this shit. Like, I was going for it. Like, I was so super ready and super into it. And but yeah, it's just, and it's funny too, because if you would have said, like, what's your ultimate gig? Like, what is the gig that you would just love to do? I mean, the first thing that I would have wanted to do is to play with Dweezil and Ahmet. And that's exactly what happened. It's so crazy. So crazy to think about it now, all these years later,
Yeah. Wow. A VHS. That's pretty advanced. Like,
because everybody at that time, they were like,
is that a cassette?
A CD or a cassette or something. And I was like, fuck that. I'm going to go visual. Like, I want people to see this
shit. Yeah. I had a CD, but I had like a 13-minute compilation of like Danny Seraphin I had worked with him. So he called my answering machine and left a little thing on my answering machine. So I had them all spliced in with people I'd worked for and then like segments of songs I'd recorded, and it was all narrated by a friend of mine. So I try to go a little bit more intense too, but it's still just a CD. I think
Danny Seraphin, man, I love that guy.
Yeah.
I love his drumming. And that's like one of the very first guys that I ever like heard as a super. I mean, 1970, I was 2 years old, and my mom was playing those Chicago records. She loved them.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that was just like background music for me, And so, and I've had a couple instances of meeting him and talking to him, and he was always super cool,
Yeah, he's a great guy. I've known him for over 20 years now, and we've just worked on and off together. And every time I'm with him, I'm just like, I can't even believe that you know my name. You know what I mean? It's like one of those. I'm sure you have the same experiences, but
I'm a big fan of him. Big fan of the Danny Seraphin.
Yeah. Great dude. Really fun to play with. Speaking of fun to play with, I mean, so Dweezil and Ahmet, I was watching a bunch of interviews with them today, and they just seem like the craziest dudes. That must have been just a totally nutty gig.
The thing about those two together at that time was like the both of them together equaled Frank in a way, because Dweezil was coming from the music side of things, where like, just like really devoted to playing the guitar and the music side. Not that Ahmet wasn't, but Ahmet's sense of humor and his unpredictability and his just the sheer balls of, just saying the things that he would say at any time and stuff. That dynamic mixed in with Dweezil really kind of, again, made it was like, wow, there's Frank right there. You know what I mean? Like those, you separate them and it's like two ingredients, and then you put them together and it kind of equals, what you would expect,
Right.
So, and it was really fun during that time to be in that band because, when they were getting along, of course, but it was so fun because it was just like gratifying every day. Like I would be sitting there rehearsing all this music and Keneally's in the band. And at first it was Scott Tunis on bass. And then later on, it ended up being Brian Beller on bass.
All right.
And I was, great friends with all these guys. So the camaraderie was there. We were rehearsing every day. The band was fucking insanely tight. I mean, so tight, so good, at that time. and I just felt like, oh my God, there's nothing that we can't do. Like we are, like I'm ready to conquer the world with this thing. It was really fun. It was really fun. Unfortunately, it didn't last. They broke up in '96. That's kind of when it kind of dissolved. But during those between '93 and '96, that band was really special. There was something going on there. The timing of it was interesting too, because if you think about the music that was happening, Eric, at that time, like it was like we're coming out of the hair metal days, right? We're coming out of Extreme and that kind of stuff, Nuno and things like that. But Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Temple of the Dog and all that stuff is coming around, and so it's like transition point. And so the thing about Dweezil and Ahmet's band is that because it was so potent musically, that we kept our heads above water, right? Instead of getting drowned out by because Nine Inch Nails was super happening at that point, and I mean, there was just like there was a lot of room for a good playing rock and roll band still, right? Even though it was getting simpler and grungier and more rocking and stuff, but the whole hair thing was just like we were kind of like on the cusp of the out of that, right? And the end of it was interesting, but it was fun while it lasted for sure.
Yeah, because one of the interviews I saw was on MTV. I mean, Dweezil still was sort of connected with the MTV thing, because I remember watching him on MTV growing up a lot, because he was kind of a host, really, like a
totally.
I don't know if he was an official VJ, but he like had a show or whatever, So
he was like almost I think he was pretty much an official VJ. He was on there a lot. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that was a good time for his career, because he had his solo records that were doing pretty good. He had a couple of them, and he was on MTV like a lot, getting a lot of exposure. Moon was around at that time with him, so it was kind of like the both of them. Right. Frank was alive and his career was thriving, and MTV was just super happening. Like MTV was it. Yeah. Oh yeah. So that was a good time for them, for the Zappas.
Yeah, it still had music on MTV.
Yeah. Yes.
Some people might not realize that the M actually stands for music.
Right. That's right. Now it stands for monotonous TV.
Yeah, exactly. So was Frank still alive when you were working with them? Did you get a chance to meet him? And
I did get a chance to meet him. It was very limited timing wise, because I joined in March of 1993, and he passed away in December. So wow. I didn't get that many opportunities, but he did see me play with the band. Very and cool. He was like super thumbs up, which made my heart just So I was just like, oh my God, my hero, and I did actually get a chance to sit with him a couple times and listen to a little bit of music, listen to him work, and he totally knew that I was a freak for him without me even having to say anything. Like he could just read my energy, like he just knew, So it was pretty amazing, and it's sad that timing wise, I just didn't get the chance to have more of those opportunities, But that's kind of just the way that it worked out.
Yeah, well, it's amazing with a guy that prolific to think about. Had he lived longer, like how much material,
He was 52 years old, like he was really young, and I'm 52 right now. Right. And I mean, could you imagine what he would be able to do with the technology the way that it is now, with with Pro Tools and just the way that everything is? I mean, he was a pioneer for everything digital. He had the earliest digital audio workstations and the synclavier and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy to think about what he could have accomplished had he had all that stuff on his side.
Yeah, it's almost like he knew in a way. Maybe that's why he was so prolific. I don't know. Yeah. He was in a hurry to get all that stuff out.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, but it is fun to. I was just going through some of the records on Spotify, because most of that stuff is up there, and it's really fun to just hear the technology in what's there. And how he used it all, and it's just each record gets crazier and crazier, technology wise. I mean, obviously it's unbelievable. Nobody needs my opinion on that.
No, it's cool. It's
waiting
good.
for me to chime in, but it was man, it's pretty amazing song. I feel like, and maybe you can speak to it. I don't know. You're either a Zappa person or you're not. It's a particular thing that's like, I think most fans come to it in the way you did, where they hear that and it's just like, oh, this is me. It's almost a culture, and
it's interesting that there doesn't seem to be that many casual Frank Zappa fans,
right.
It's like they're just like, when they get it, they're like, holy shit, they're so consumed by it, they're like lifers, they just go in, and then or they're just like, this is just way too, does humor belong in music? That's the eternal question. It's like, this is too goofy for me, or this is too musically over my head, like where's the beat, or whatever, like, you really have to admire the influences and the ingredients that make up his music in order to really get it, like he was like classically oriented with doo-wop and R&B and with humor, Spike Jones and a sense of humor thrown in on the side, and you swirl all that together, and it's like, you have to really kind of like be able to respect that stuff in order to kind of get it. If you can't, then that's okay. It's just not for you.
Right. But I think it's also music that's meant to be listened to. Like, you don't throw it on while you're mowing the lawn. You know what I mean? Or like, I'm going to do some yoga, and it's not background music.
It demands your attention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's just, man, and you blink your eyes or you blink your ears and you miss so much, so much goes by so fast. And in a lot of those songs, it's pretty amazing. I was watching a lot of Zappa Plays Zappa and you were a part of the original lineup of that, right? And,
yes.
And, man, it's unbelievable, because it's been called like a tribute band. I've seen it, but it's really not, because it involved a lot of people that played with, in the beginning anyway, people that played, like Terry Bozzio was on it, right? And,
yep. Vi and Napoleon Murphy Brock and Ray White. Yep. And then, eventually Dweezil just wanted to, try to establish that unit as its own thing without having to rely on having those guys. That was one of the things I know that he wanted to do. And that original band, was pretty special, So there was a lot of talent there, and there was, in the beginning, there was a lot of good spirits too, like we were all kind of just like a team, and we wanted to do the music justice, and we, I think we really definitely accomplished that. It wasn't easy, but it was cool. I lasted pretty long there. I stopped with them in 2012 or 13. I can't remember, something like that.
The internet says 2013.
But... Yeah, thank you. My memory is crazy. What's crazy is that at that time, when I left Zappa Plays Zappa, I had been playing with Dweezil for 20 years.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Amazing. That's incredible.
A long time.
So, like, what was your process? I mean, obviously you're a huge fan, so you've heard these songs a million times, but to watch everybody play this music for 2 hours, completely memorized, no one's reading charts. Like, what's the process of even learning an 8-minute? I mean, most of these songs are like 8 minutes long on the records. Then you go live and you're doing solos. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to retain.
You have to be that kind of a musician where you've got the ears to memorize things. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is you just have to have the budget, right? Because if you have enough time to sit there and rehearse these people, right? And if they can retain the stuff, then that's what it's about. It's about having musicians that can retain it, and then having the budget to get them up and running for a significant amount of rehearsal time, so that you can go out there and have a confident sounding group to play the stuff the way that it's meant to be played. Because that was Frank's thing. It's like accuracy. That was like a big deal for him. He didn't really like a lot of mistakes. He really wanted to hear the stuff played right. And so you can't, like, that was actually, Eric, that's one of the frustrations that he had with working with orchestras, because in the world of orchestras, you really don't get a lot of rehearsal time.
Right.
So, so it's just part of this, the way that culture works. You get like 3 days, maybe max. And then then you're playing with the LA Phil, you're playing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that music is pretty demanding. And Frank was pretty much a stickler for wanting to hear certain things a certain way. And so you really need to be able to like have a unit that is willing to spend the time, love the music enough to spend the time to make it right. And that was a lot of frustration for him, is that the orchestras didn't give a fuck. They were just like, this is a gig. Here's this crazy music. We've got 2 days to get it up and running, and we're going to do the best we can. And if it doesn't work out, they could care less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was tough for him. So that was like, we really wanted to just like do it right, at that time.
And so did you start with the charts, like his charts, or did you just learn it off the records? Or
It was both. And we also, we had some advantages because we were able to go to the actual stems of some of the original songs.
Oh, wow, cool.
So we could hear isolated parts. And, like I would have sit down meetings with like Sheila and Jamie and Aaron, and I would play them like, here's the flute part, here's the rhythm guitar part, and they would like pick out the notes, and they'd write like a little cheat sheet down, and then they would implement that, and stuff into the rehearsal for the next couple of days. And we actually, I would dip into some of the old parts too, and we would try and get some of Frank's original parts written, that would be written. Not everything was written out, but if it was written out, Gail was kind enough to let us kind of sift through the archives and find some of that stuff. So that was super beneficial, obviously, and it kind of helped separate us from everybody else because we had that major advantage of the stems and the parts.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so how much rehearsal time did it take?
I believe there was months.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the beginning, there was months. Mm-hmm. And then the unit stayed together for a while. And throughout time, like as the years progressed and stuff, we didn't need as much because, we had put the time in to learn massive vocabularies worth of tunes. But Dweezil would always like pile on the tunes, like he was famous for like, okay, here's 25 songs that I want to do. And we would just be like, holy fuck, Jesus Christ, we're going to have to learn 25 songs. And everybody would go home, shedding all this stuff. And then when the time came, we got to maybe like 11 of them, and it was like, oh my God, so frustrating. Like, dude, don't pile it on, man.
It's the worst.
Yeah, super worst. I mean, we were all getting paid and everything, but still, it's like, I felt bad for everybody, like going home and shedding 25 kind of hard songs,
Yeah, a little bit. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that drives me nuts just in general when people bog you down. So then you can't spend the time on the songs that you really want to because there's so many songs. And then when you get to the rehearsal and you're only doing a few, it's like, I could have really killed these few songs. If you
absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. It's like, it's kind of like, good organizational skills. Like, let's just focus on these and make these the best as we can be, Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're playing this stuff, like normally for me anyways, like I'm kind of just focused in on the drums because I'm a bass player. I'm listening to the kick drum and the hi-hat and I'm just trying to lock. This music is not really like that. Like, because sometimes it's really funky and really groovy. Other times there's lines that you're doubling with the guitar player or just the keyboard player. So like, what's in your monitor? Like, what are you focused on? Do you have a general thing or are you just constantly, okay, now I got to listen to that. Now I got to listen to this. Like the sound check must be a nightmare.
Well, once we went in-ears, we were all in-ears and stuff. And so it was like kind of like a monitor man nightmare. But at one point, Dweezil went with this system where everybody had their own mixer, right? So we were kind of like
cool.
dialing up our own things, And plus, in the beginning tours, we were playing with video, so we were actually playing with Frank, which was cool. So we had like my mixer. I had a mixer. I was the one that had a mixer, my own isolated mixer, before anybody else in the band, because I was the one driving everybody with the click track to the video.
Gotcha.
So I had like a stereo mix of the band, the live band, fed to me from the monitor engineer, and then I had one track of click and then one track of Frank's vocal and guitar from the video. So I had like basically one, two, three, like four tracks that I was kind of like mixing in real time as I was playing. But here's the thing: during the rehearsal time, I was super involved and to make sure that everybody was playing the right shit, you know? So we were dissecting everything during rehearsals. But that band was so good and so consistent that once they got the stuff up and running, I didn't really have to like monitor that shit anymore. Like I felt like I didn't have to constantly, almost everybody, you know, once they got it up and running, they were there, you know. And then by the time our first shows came, it was like, well, we did the work, and now it's up to you at that point, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to have all those instruments just blaring away. I just had to have a really kind of, you know, I wanted to feel my drums, and I wanted to just kind of get an overall, but I didn't have to have everything like super screaming loud and, you know, and all that stuff. Like by that time I was just kind of coasting. Once we get to the shows, it's just like, just give me a good, decent mix, you know, with a little ambience in there, and I'll just play the tunes, you know?
Wow. Well, yeah, it's amazing thing that we have YouTube now too, because, you know, I've just spent like the last 2 days just watching you play with all these different, you know, setups, and there's so much on there with the Zappa Plays Zappa. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, that original, the DVD that we did a DVD from the first tour, which was shot in Portland and Seattle. And I'm so happy that that exists. You know, a lot of that stuff is on YouTube, obviously, the really well shot stuff. And I'm glad that was documented, because there was so much work that went into that original tour, you know, with Terry and Steve Vai and all that. And so I'm so glad. And, you know, we won a Grammy for one song, which is crazy. I would have never expected that at all. In fact, I didn't think that was going to happen at all. I didn't go, you know. I was completely working at the Zappa house the night that the Grammys happened, and they all went, you know, everybody went, the entire band went, except me. I didn't go. And when I went at the time, you know, working at the house, that house was located in Laurel Canyon, right? Which is now Lady Gaga's house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I did hear that, actually.
Yes. So I would work up there, and it was like, I didn't really get that good a cell phone response, you know, up there. Mm-hmm. So when it was like 7:30, 8 o'clock or something like that, I was calling in a night, and I was getting ready. Driving down the hill from Laurel Canyon. All of a sudden, you know, as soon as my cell phone got cell phone response, it just completely blew up, like ding, 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 ding. I was like, holy shit, my phone's going crazy. And then I thought, oh my God, we must have won. You know, like, holy shit, we won. You know,
that's so cool.
Yeah,
wow, that's a great story. When you say you were working at the house, so you're the Vaultmeister.
Yes.
Explain to me exactly what that is.
So I'm in charge of basically digitizing and documenting the contents of the vault, accumulating data and helping to produce future projects for the trust. And I've been doing it now for, you know, a long, long time. Since 1995 is when I started doing it. And then probably around 96, 97 is when I started getting involved in like helping out with material for releases. And then I started working side by side with Gail, and we were kind of like a joint production team, and we were doing releases through mail order, and then, you know, back and forth with different record companies. And then everything came together in 2012, which was pretty amazing. Universal became the main record company that all of Frank's catalog is being distributed through. And we've had a really wonderful relationship with them ever since. And so the entire catalog, the entire 120 some records, can all be found through Universal, on Spotify, on your favorite streaming. It's wonderful, because for the longest time, the fans know that the history of the catalog it was kind of like divided amongst different companies from a long time, and the catalog was kind of like spread out, and some of it was out of print, some of it was in print. It was kind of a mishmash of contracts throughout all the years. Mm-hmm. And by the time 2012 came, everything kind of got put in one big basket, and we finally made it all like available through one thing. And was a dream come true. We got to remaster a lot of the catalog and make it sound amazing, and kind of like, start from scratch and represent it to the people. And it was just, for me, it was a dream come true. It was so wonderful to be able to have that opportunity and make that catalog shine. And now here we are, like, almost 10 years later, and it's thriving. We've got so many releases. So, but the Vaultmeister, I mean, you have to know how to handle tape. You have to know the different kinds of tape. You have to not ruin it, because there's a lot of tape that just won't play. A lot of these formats just haven't lasted over time due to the elements. So you really have to know how to handle it. You have to know how to run the machines and, do transfers and run a database and back everything up multiple times. Make sure you don't lose all your work. And also you have to migrate files to the modern stuff too, like things that were on DA88 and ADAT and all that stuff. If you were in that world, you have to be able to transfer that shit and get that into wave files and hard drives and things that are of the now.
Right.
But, so with Frank, he was doing, analog tape, film, videotape, like 1-inch and 2-inch quad videotape. And then he was doing a lot of floppy disk stuff. And, in the early days of digital, all floppies, which is hilarious. And so, yeah, it's my job to make sure that stuff lives on for the ages. And then, and while I'm doing that, archiving away, I'm now a joint producer with Ahmet Zappa, who is Ahmet and Diva are in charge of the Zappa Trust currently. And so we, as a team, work as presenting these latest releases, the things that have been coming out now, because Gail has passed, and so she's not here. And so that's where we're at these days, and it's been going great.
Wow. And how did that come about? Did you apply to an ad in the LA Weekly?
No. So being the drummer, right, for Ahmet and Dweezil, I was at the house a lot, just kind of recording there and just, being at the house. And after Frank had passed, there was a crew of people that he left behind, a technician, an engineer, a secretary, a bunch of people. And so obviously I was, around them. And one day I just kind of couldn't help it any longer. I was like, please take me down in the vault. I just would love to see the vault. I mean, anybody that's a super fan, that's like, going to the friggin' candy store,
Exactly.
So they brought me down there, and I was like, just kind of like looking around with my eyes wide open and my jaw hitting the floor going, holy shit, look at all of this stuff. And like, I was like, oh my God, you know what this is? And do you know what this is? Like, just reading the sides of the spines of the tape boxes, I was like, oh my God. And so they went back and told Gail, they said, hey, Dweezil's drummer knows a lot about what's in the vault. And so she goes, great, he's the Vaultmeister. And the next thing I knew, I was, I had a key to the vault, and I was standing in the vault by myself with a pad of paper and a pen. I had no computer skills whatsoever.
Whoa.
Very minimal experience with tape. Very minimal. Mm-hmm. And it was on the job training, man. I went for it. I had the luxury of knowing a lot of the history of music.
Right.
So I instantly started learning how to run a database, learning how to run a computer, learning how to run tape machines, learning how to not fuck up tapes. I learned from the best, So it was quite an unbelievable experience, to think back on it now. But yeah, that's how it happened.
Wow. And when you say vault, so was it stored in the proper way? Even like, is it just basement, or it was like?
It was a underground vault that was built underneath the house, and it was climate controlled and concrete. And unfortunately, it did have a little bit of leaks here and there. So when it rained, it was a total nightmare. But for the most part, that stuff was kept under lock and key in a good, decent, climate-controlled area.
So he knew that he needed to protect all this stuff, and he kind of set up.
Here's what's interesting about that is he was one of the first artists in in music history to obtain the rights to all of his original master tapes. So like in early 1980s, like probably 80 or 81, he won a lawsuit that got all the original tapes from MGM Verve in the 60s and all the Warner Brothers tapes and all that stuff. He was able to acquire all that stuff. And I think Bowie might have been one of the second people to do that or whatever, just to, and they all made deals with Ryko Disc and started reissuing all this thing, all that stuff in those early days in the 80s. But yeah, so like all those master tapes ended up being in his possession. And so he just started, he didn't really spend too much time doing a lot of vault work because he was really kind of interested in doing new music, but he knew that there was an audience for those old recordings. And so he kind of, devoted some time to doing vault stuff, some time to doing interviews, some time to doing television, some time to doing screenplays and his own new music. I mean, it was just nonstop, incredible. The work ethic.
Was he wasn't a drinker, or like, was he one of those clean and sober dudes that just worked all the time?
Totally. I mean, he would have like a margarita or a little some red wine, socially or whatever. But no, he wasn't interested in getting fucked up. For him, it was about cigarettes and double espressos.
Right.
That was food and water, double espressos and cigarettes.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it's quite a responsibility that was bestowed upon you.
It really is. And it's funny because, like, when you're in it, you know that you've got a job to do, and you're just kind of grinding away and stuff. But when I do reflect, when I do look back on the amount of stuff I've been involved with and the opportunities, and it's just like it really is a mind blower. Like, it's just super incredible to think about the gifts, to be able to have this opportunity to just be involved in such an amazing legacy,
Yeah. And so you probably digitized that very first song that you heard as that little kid.
That's right.
That's pretty insane.
That's right. Yeah. When we remastered the catalog for 2012, it was so crazy to just go to the original tapes and retransfer them all, one by one, each record. And it was so great. It's just amazing. Yeah. What's amazing, Eric, is like, Frank was such a master at razor blade editing, right? And with Pro Tools, what it's like to do editing in Pro Tools, obviously, and that's like so convenient and so the way to go. But, cutting tape was an art.
Right.
And he was such a master at it. And when you put the original masters of some of these records up and you let them play and you see the tape edits going by, you're just like, holy shit. Like the amount of time spent on just sitting there and, because like literally like bars of music being cut together. It's really insane, man. It's unbelievable.
And he did it himself?
Yeah.
Wow. I guess it's sort of the modern day then. Now it's even obsolete now, but at that point, the modern day equivalent of Beethoven sitting at a piano with a pencil, scoring out every little detail of the thing. He's there with a razor blade and tape and
yeah. Well, first he did that. First he sat and wrote the little dots on paper, right? And then it became the razor blade was an instrument.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
And a lost art nowadays.
Yeah, these kids today, man, they just
they have no clue.
So there are a lot of us out of work right now, waiting to get back to playing shows and touring. And I know I've had to do whatever I can do to take my mind off the situation from time to time. And one of the ways to pass the time is to catch up on some books you've missed. But if you're like me and you don't love to read, there's another way you can consume. Audible.com has thousands of titles to choose from, including audiobooks about music production, songwriting, the music business, music theory, instructional audiobooks, and biographies of your favorite musical heroes. But besides audiobooks, you can also listen to podcasts, theatrical performances, A-list comedy, and exclusive audio originals you won't find anywhere else. Right now, you can get a free 30-day trial if you visit audibletrial.com/divebarrockstar. That's audibletrial.com/divebarrockstar, and you can catch up on your audio reading. I'd like to take a second to thank you for listening to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast. As a new podcast, getting the word out is a vital part of what it takes to keep the show on the road, or off the road, as the current case may be. If you would like to support the podcast, all you got to do is subscribe wherever you listen. And if you have an extra minute or two, please leave a review. You can also share and follow the podcast on your social media apps. Okay, enough begging. I hope you're having fun. And once again, thank you for listening. So I wanted to kind of get to the band that I'm very impressed that you played with, because I'm a huge fan. I only saw them once in the 90s, and you were the drummer.
Oh, really?
and that is Duran Duran.
Yeah.
How did that gig come up?
Okay, so the first gig that I ever played with Dweezil and Ahmet with Z was in May or June or something like that of 1993 at a club in LA called Club Lingerie.
Right. I think it's on the internet, actually. I think I watched that today.
That's right. Yeah. There is some stuff on there from That's right.
Yeah.
So that was an epic night for me, because that was like my first professional gig, first fucking outing with the band. I'm 23 years old. I'm fresh in town. I'm just like, I'm ready, Mm-hmm. And in the audience was like celebrity after celebrity. It was completely packed. Weird Al Yankovic was there. Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes was there.
Wow.
A lot of the Zappa family's friends were there. And Frank was there, which is insane. So insane. And Warren Cucurullo was there and sat with Frank and Gail at the table, up there in the balcony. And, Frank was like, wow, that drummer. And Warren was like, yeah, that drummer. So Warren asked me if I'd be interested in coming to London and do his solo stuff, because Duran was in a hiatus, because they used to wait so long for Simon to come up with lyrics for the new stuff. They would just be in a holding pattern, and Warren used to get really frustrated. So he was like, I want to play, I want to play. I want to do my stuff. So I used to go in like 1995 and 1990, like 95 and 96, around there. I used to go to London and play these solo gigs with a trio. It was Nick Beggs. You know Nick Beggs?
I don't know him.
Nick Beggs plays with Stephen Wilson now, but he was in Kajagoogoo.
Oh,
he's a bass player.
Oh, yeah, Kajagoogoo.
Yeah. So Nick, it was me, Nick, and Warren, and we were doing trio gigs in London.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how it started. And then Wes Waymiller?
Yes. So okay. I never actually met him, but I saw him play at Berklee. I was at Berklee with him. And
okay, so you know about him, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I told Warren, I said, well, listen, if you ever decide that you want to do some gigs in the States, in LA or whatever, I said, I've got the bass player for you. I said, you don't have to bring Nick over, and spend the money. I said, I've got someone here. So I introduced him to Wes. So it was Wes and I and Warren playing gigs together. Okay. Gotcha. Doing his music. And then John Taylor bailed on Duran Duran in 1996 or 97. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Wes got the call, right? So Wes now is in Duran Duran.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, that's so great. I'm so happy for you, man, and they toured, for 97 and maybe a little bit of 98 or whatever. And then in 99, they had a kind of a tour scheduled, and their drummer got into a scheduling conflict with Jeff Beck, because he was playing with Jeff Beck. And so I wake up one day and there's a message on my machine, and it's Warren saying, Joe, the time has come, man. You need give me a call. And then right after that was Wes going, Joe, holy shit, man, you're not going to believe this, but Warren just called me, and and I was like, oh my God, it's happening. I knew it. I knew what was going on,
Right.
So the next thing I knew, man, I had a ticket to go to London, and I went and I learned all the material, and we played, and it was totally cool. And so I ended up doing that gig from 1999 to 2001. And in 2001, that was when Duran decided to do a reunion with the original Cats, right? So yeah. Warren, Wes, and myself were out of a job at that point. But that was cool. It was an amazing experience. 2 years of that,
Yeah.
And so that's how it came together.
And were you a fan before that, or is it just a gig?
I wasn't a super fan during the 80s, but when Warren joined, I started, I started listening a little more because, come on, let's face it, Come Undone and Ordinary World and Notorious and that kind of stuff. Those are really good songs.
Yeah.
And he was responsible for he was a big deal. He was a big part of the kind of comeback of Duran Duran during that time, like the Wedding album, and
right.
that kind
of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. So their material, I really liked the Thank You record, which was the cover record. I was liking everything that was happening. So I was definitely more interested in that stuff. But I had no problem learning the 80s stuff. I mean, it was fun, learning Girls on Film and Planet Earth and, all that stuff. It was all super, super fun music to play. So it wasn't like it was a bum out at all. It was just great, Right.
Yeah, I'm, and as a fan of Duran Duran, it was cool when they all reunited and everything. But I always think about Warren too, because he was such a big part of the band for a long time. He was in that band for over a decade, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they wrote some great music together.
Yeah,
Warren is he's an insanely talented person, Yeah. So their time, they produced some great music during his time.
And were they still, they're legendary for parties and women, and was it still crazy by the time you got in the band?
It was still crazy. It was fun. Yeah, I mean, it was all respectful and everything, but it was insane. I got to live out my rock and roll fantasies, being in that band. I had hair at that time, and I was thinner, and I was in good shape, and I was dressing up and glamming it up, because I grew up with Alice Cooper and T-Rex and Sweet and all those glam, I was a glam rocker that was like, and I love Marilyn Manson, and I love Nine Inch Nails, and I love stuff like that, right? So I rock fantasy stuff is the good shit. That's the stuff that I used to really, really love. Right. And so, wow, next thing I know, wow, I can actually get leather pants, and I can wear a turquoise fishnet top and a feather boa, and I'll be okay in this band.
You almost have to keep the gig.
It was so fun. I remember, Wes and I sitting during rehearsals when there would be a little bit of off time, we'd play for a couple hours and then we'd get some food and chill out, right? And when we would be chilling, they'd be doing business in the other room or whatever, phone calls and whatever they'd be doing. And Wes and I would be in the green room painting our nails. It was so fun. It was so great. And I met some really, really great people. They had a pretty strong fan base, and touring during that time, I made some friends. It was really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And how is Nick Rhodes as a keyboard player?
He's good. He's minimalistic, but effective and classy, and debonair. Yeah. and he was my favorite.
Oh, cool.
Like talking with him, and we had a lot musically in common, even though I was kind of I don't know, maybe 10 years younger than him or more, probably. But I grew up on a lot of the same stuff that the stuff that he was listening to when he was, a young teenager and stuff. If he was 16, I don't actually really know exactly how old he is, but I'm going to assume that when he was 16 and listening to Bowie, I was 6 or 7 listening to Bowie because of my uncle being 10 years older than me and exposing me to all this great shit. So all the stuff that he was into that turned him into the musician that he is,
Mm-hmm.
I was also listening to at an awkwardly young age, right? So we had that in common, and I think that that was like it kind of bonded us a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool. Like, you know, he liked a lot of the same shit that I did, so it was great that we had that in common. Now Simon and I, on the other hand, that's a different story. Yeah, different story. You know, but you know, in the end, Simon was very complimentary about my drumming, which meant a lot to me, and so that, you know, I came out of that whole experience feeling like I know that I did a really good job and that they were really happy, and that's ultimately, you know, that makes me feel good about all of it, and I got to have a blast. I had a blast during that time, you know, and it happened at a time in my life where it was perfect. Because I was like 31 or 32 years old, and I could still play the part of being a rock star if I wanted to, you know.
Absolutely.
But yet I had never played to like shows to that extent of like screaming people.
Right.
Like I can remember walking out on stage, and the screams were so loud that like my fucking ears would bottom out. Like it was so loud it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, holy shit, this is what that's what this sounds like.
Right.
You know?
And so you probably weren't on in-ears at that point.
I was.
Oh, got you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would have them.
Oh, you'd have to be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably tracks and stuff, right?
Every song on that gig, except for maybe one or two, was with a click.
Right.
So, and that was cool. It was cool with me. I didn't mind it.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's kind of why I asked about Nick Rhodes, because back in the day, I remember Roger with the big headphones, you know, so they were one of the first bands that are using a click all the time. And because Nick Rhodes actually had a computer, like a, you know, CRT monitor on the stage, you know, early on. And I'm always wondering, like, how much is he playing and how much is it, you know, and I'm sure it's all his craft work, you know, that's a funny phrase, but computer music. But anyway, or you know, how much is he playing and how much is the computer playing? And so obviously there would have to be in-ears or some kind of headphones.
It was half and half, honestly. Like there was a lot of tracks. There was a lot of background vocals and a lot of keyboard parts and pads.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also, you know, playing live with it.
Yeah.
I remember he had this really cool thing that he would put his hand in front of, and it would manipulate the sound, you know?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, so he was doing that kind of shit, and just like looking amazing, you know, and taking his finger and going boop, and then, you know, a sound would happen and he'd still be looking amazing, and he'd have his finger up to his ear, like he's listening intently, and it would, boop, there's the next sound, you know. It was perfect.
Right. Yeah. So cool. And so, you know, I don't know. Great band though. I really loved how the parts all intertwined, and like, no matter whether he's playing it or not, like, even if it's a simple part, it's like they all work. It's well produced stuff. You know, they really are an interesting band in the way that their parts all work, you know, but.
Well, as a bass player, I mean, you have to admire those lines and those early songs.
Oh, forget about it. I think he's the most underrated bass player in rock history, honestly. Like, you really try to play that stuff. It's one thing to listen to it, and if you think it's cheesy pop music, fine, you can think that. It'll come across like that. But try to play Rio.
Yeah.
Bass. You know, that bass line is no joke. It is not easy, you know?
Yes.
So, yeah, absolutely. But Wes nailed it the night that I saw you guys.
Oh my God,
he was a really great bass player. And you know him from Berklee, right?
Yeah, we met at Berklee in 1990. And I played with him, and I was like, holy shit, I started introducing him to everybody. You know, like, this kid is fucking amazing. He had like a yellow Factor bass. Remember those?
Yeah.
So he had a yellow one of those, I think, or a black one. I can't remember. And you know, I mean, like, you know, all you had to do was listen to him, and you knew that he was talented. You know.
Yeah.
So, and I moved out to Los Angeles in 1992, and it wasn't very long that he followed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm pretty sure I came out first, but yeah, he didn't have to worry. All people had to do was listen to him play, and he would get gigs. You know, he was just so good. It's so sad that he left us at such an early age.
Yeah,
it was a real super loss of talent, and a super sweet guy.
Yeah.
I miss Wes.
Yeah. I bet so.
Yeah.
He passed away of cancer, right? And,
Yeah, it was like thyroid stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him play a bunch of times because I was actually there at Berklee. But one time I specifically remember, it was the first time I saw you play, actually, because it was Brian Beller's, another bass player from Berklee, his senior recital.
Yeah, I remember that.
Came out, you had come back. You had graduated but came back to play that. And I was in the room. And he and Wes did a bass duet during that. It was really, really cool.
Yes, he did. They did a Better Mousetrap by John Patitucci. That was one of them.
Yeah. Great times.
Yeah, I remember coming back. Brian had miles, on his airline account. They flew me back, and it was so nice to come back and play that show and be around everybody again.
Yeah,
it was cool. Yeah,
Berklee, it's cool. Did you have a good time there?
I loved Berklee. I loved it. I had an amazing time there. I was super, super busy though. Like I had a gig. I was working at Tower Records the entire time that I was there. I had a job. So I was working at Tower Records, and I had a girlfriend, and I was going to school. So it was just like nonstop. It was really, being that young, you can have that kind of lifestyle and be cool with it.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally every day, like nonstop, but it was fun.
You mentioned it before, but it was a great time to be at Berklee. I think, Berklee was, now it's massive. It's this big, huge, they've taken over all of Back Bay, and it's really expensive. It was really expensive then, but kind of not like it is now. And I don't know, Boston was a cool place. And I really had a good time. I wasn't there as long as you, but I had a really great time there too.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Okay. So yes, Boston is an amazing town. I love Boston. I enjoyed my time there so much. But I did, when I was on tour was either Zappa Plays Zappa or Joe Satriani. I can't remember which one it was, but I went back to that area, Back Bay, that street, Mass Ave and Newbury, and that whole area there, right?
Right.
And I went back there one afternoon just to like have lunch and to walk around and see what was going on around there, because I hadn't been there in so long. And it was super sad. It was super disappointing. And because, when I was there, it was like musician heaven, because you had like 3 different music stores. You had like Daddy's Junkie Music and Jack's Drum Shop and Manny's, right? And all this stuff. And then you had record shops. You had Looney Tunes, which was a cool record shop. And then you had Tower Records on the corner there, which was huge. And then you had Newbury Comics down the street. So you had like 3 cool record shops to go to. Yeah. And then there was like, like cool places to eat, 2 pizza shops and like whatever. Yes. Yes. And so like there was so much to do if you were a musician. Like there was so much energy there. Mm. And all of that is gone. Like all of that is gone. Jack's Drum Shop is gone. Manny's, all the music stores are gone. Tower Records is gone.
Yeah.
Newbury Comics is still there. Looney Tunes, I don't think, is there. Most of the restaurants are now like chain, like there's a McDonald's, and there's still, I think, the pizza shop, but everything else got bought out by the school. And it's like, how many places do you need in order to buy books?
Right.
Or sweatshirts that say Berklee on it. It's like, oh my God. And New York City has turned that way too. Like I remember going to New York City in the 90s, and there was great places to go check out if you're a musician. Just like there were tons of places to play if you were a musician, cool classic bars. But then like, if you went down to St. Mark's Place, there was like Trash and Vaudeville and all these great cool stores for clothes and record shops and all that stuff. And now, and video stores and media and all that shit. And now all that shit's gone. And everything, all the venues are bought up. Like all the classic venues are gone. All the record stores are gone. Everything's gone. It's like, how many Starbucks do we need? It's like,
yeah, that's true. Well, I wonder how much this COVID thing is going to change everything, and this massive break right now of us, like everything being put on hold, everybody taking a step back from this crazy materialistic sort of life that we've grown accustomed to, and now you're having to deal with some pretty heavy stuff with this virus and everything. I don't know. I wonder if that's going to shake some soul back into some people. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope that the people are realizing how much they miss music, live music, and like going out and seeing bands play and concerts and all that stuff. Like, that's part of our culture. And I'm hoping that people aren't being like, hey, we've been without it this long. We don't fucking need that shit. It's like, come on,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be just the opposite. I think people are just champing at the bit to get back into it. You know what I mean? Like every time we even open up a little bit, it's like people flood to the clubs. People are just anxious to get out, and these drive-in theater shows that have been happening, they're selling out, and people are really missing it. And we're guys who tour still, and I've been for the last 3 years touring hardcore, like 135 shows a year. And
that's so great that you're doing that.
Yeah. And there's, plenty of people doing it, and people are still selling out shows. You know what I mean? It's like, it might not be as big as it used to be, but there is still fandom out there somewhere,
Yeah.
So, and now that they can't do it, they're going to be, it's going to be off the chain once this thing opens up again, I think. I hope.
I do too, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So crazy.
Well, anyways, back to you. How do we get back to the...
Oh my God.
Well, I wanted to also kind of connect like Warren Cucurullo, Missing Persons, Zappa. It's all sort of Zappa related still.
That's right.
It's the Duran Duran Zappa continuum.
It's so true. Yeah, Frank is like, there's a thread in so much that leads back to him, and how much he touched so much. And that you can't escape it. It's so true. All those great musicians that came through his band that went on to have their own careers, and so the tree has so many branches. And when you look at how many, wonderful, wonderful things that has spawned through the 3 decades of Frank being around, it's super impressive. And another thing that's really amazing is how well respected and revered Frank is. And another thing too, I will say that about Duran Duran. Yeah, I remember, Eric, when I was on the road with those guys, and we would be playing like some shows with other bands on it. Like I remember we were doing some festivals or something, and then we would be doing some special engagement, and there would be some bands of the now that would be on the bill with us, like Orgy, remember them and all that stuff. Like there'd be all these bands that were like of the now, and they would be on the bill with us. And then like I remember just like they all just wanted to come and say hello and meet them and pay their respects and just be like, you guys were like, so and I used to just sit in the back and have a glass of wine and just watch all that kind of stuff. And Simon and Nick were always very, very sweet to those people, all the bands, all the different bands that wanted to come and meet them. And I just remember being like, these guys are like, they're well respected, they're well revered, like, right. It's true. And I'm sure it's still to this day.
Yeah. Well, I think that the Warren years helped to just solidify that, because they kept going. They weren't just this passing thing, thanks to him coming in and them having hit songs, and it's just this whole, like you said, this whole other part of their catalog that makes them a much rounder package. You know what I mean? And I remember seeing the show and being so relieved that they did everything, that you guys did everything too. It was like there was Girls on Film and Rio and New Moon on Monday and like, well, all those records that you mentioned before, but it was all in there, and you really hear a pretty amazing book. You know what I mean? It's a pretty incredible catalog.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was quite an experience, man. I was that's like one of those things where I look back and I just am so grateful and blessed that I had that opportunity to do that, to be a part of an organization that was successful, really successful, and kind of like a legendary band,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I did a short tour with ABC from the
Oh
80s.
yeah.
Martin Fry. And
Yeah.
we were on a thing, just a big 80s, show. So there was, in fact, the gig, one of the last gigs we played was in Vegas at the Mandalay Bay.
Oh yeah.
And at the big, the stage out in the swimming pool and stuff. Anyway, and there was probably 20 acts on the show. It started at like 2 p.m. and we went on at 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Across the street in the big concert stage was Duran Duran.
Oh, nice.
Just Duran Duran. You know what I mean? So that, I think, that's when you can really tell. Like, here's a bunch of other 80s bands all fitting on the same bill. Duran Duran is selling out 10,000 seats, by themselves, because they've just reached that kind of status,
Totally. Do you remember the album How to Be a Millionaire by ABC?
Yeah. We played that song, actually.
I love that. I love that record.
Yeah. Oh man, dude, that was probably that tour was 3 weeks long, because he it was Martin Fry and his guitar player Matt Backer came from England, and then Matt Rohde and guy from Tonic, Pete Maloney on drums. Really, really great.
Did they have a sax player at that time?
Well, actually,
was it
Jim? Jim came and played a few shows with us. Yeah. Jim Wheeler came, and he was amazing. Anyways, it was a dream gig for me. Like, of all the gigs that I've done, that 3 weeks of time, and we were wearing suits, and it was just like, shoot that poison arrow. I mean, we just did all the songs, and because we were the sort of the headliner most of the time. So because Martin had like 5 hits, with When Smokey Sings and
The Look of Love, Poison Arrow. Hell yeah.
So we actually did a little set, and then sometimes we would do like an hour set at certain venues, but when it was the big long show, everyone would come out and play their one hit, and sometimes it was to tracks or whatever. Then we get to us, and it was like, we'd have 5 or 6 songs on a long show. And so anyways, it was such a blast. I'm such an 80s pop nerd, so to have that. Great. And then my wife saw me play with them, and she's like, "Oh, I understand you so much better now." Just watching me up there, I'm like, now I'm in my element. Put me in a suit, playing this music.
Unbelievable.
It is so much fun.
There was a time there in the late 90s and early 2000s where I started playing like a lot with 80s bands. Like, it just kind of happened. Like, I did a gig with Berlin. Just one. And then I did the Motels.
Oh man, that's right. I saw that on your resume somewhere. That must have been cool.
I like Martha. She's great. And then, of course, I filled in for Terry on the missing persons thing, so that was kind of hilarious. So it was like all of a sudden, like all these 80s things were like popping up. All these 80s were a lot of 80s work.
Yeah, back, man.
Yeah.
And I'm happy about it. It's like, I'd rather go do that. There's just a different feeling when even if you're playing like a modern, if you were on Lady Gaga, for instance, right now, or whoever the biggest, Rihanna or whatever, it wouldn't feel the same as playing that music that you grow up with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a different thing. It's a little more fun in a way.
Yeah, it's got that whole nostalgia thing, and it was part of you, so it's like more fun to play that music because it's like, you just love it.
And this is like why I play music. You know what I mean?
Yes. And if you're lucky enough to be able to play music like that for a living, then it's like, at that point, it's like, it's not even work. It's just like, oh my God, you're just having fun. And that's a great time right there.
Yeah.
That's what it's like for me to play Frank's music, because I just love the music so much. It's just like, it's not even work. It's like, I'm literally playing stuff that I love. So, it's great.
To tell you the truth, like I was saying too, I've never been a Zappa fan. So for the last 2 days because I want to be prepared. I tend to do my research on these things, So for 2 days, I've just been watching and learning and reading, and there's so many things. Like, I started reading about, Warren and reading about Terry Bozzio, who I knew a lot about, because you can't go to Berklee without knowing about Terry Bozzio, but just the education about Zappa and just being reminded and then learning a lot more is just so cool. And it's, I don't know, it's just really cool that your dream artist you've been able to be so involved with. Like, congratulations.
I know. Thank you, man. I know it's like fate almost. It's just like sitting there, I really truly believe that, like, if you're not an asshole, and if you really do have the talent or the goods to set a goal and try to achieve that goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that anything's possible. I really do. I think that you can really accomplish some things if you just are together, and people's going to call you. People are going to call you back if they like you, and if they also like what you have to offer musically too. It's just like,
right.
It can just happen.
Yeah.
I was just really fortunate and lucky and grateful and blessed and all that stuff. And I'm just so glad that I've been able to keep making a living doing it.
Yeah. So that's a steady gig then. It's like a salaried position or something.
Yeah.
That's really great. Yeah. That's really lucky.
Well, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done. We're working on so much, that for like the last 5 years, there's been a documentary in the works on Frank Zappa, and it's finally coming out. It'll be available on Thanksgiving, as we're saying, Franksgiving. But,
nice.
Yeah, but it's finally going to be available to stream. But it has been playing at some various, you had mentioned some of the drive-in theaters and stuff. And so there has been some festivals that has happened over the past couple months that it's been playing at, but it's sad because obviously with COVID and everything, like, it didn't get the true chance to do the theater runs, which is sucks. Yeah. But finally it is coming out. So, we're excited about that. And then we had a soundtrack that we put together that we've been working on. And so it's been a lot of work, but it's finally actually going to be happening. So that's exciting. That if you get a chance, you should check the movie out. It's really well done. It's just a little over 2 hours. You could do 7 hours on the guy and it wouldn't be enough. But but it's a nice chunk of well done documentary. So if you get a chance,
I'm a documentary junkie, so it will be watched by me.
Cool. Excellent.
Especially now that I've been primed by all this research.
Yeah. No, I think you'll love it. Let me know if you get a chance to see it. Just drop me a text and be like, dude, I saw it, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So give me one good, like, diva Simon Le Bon story. You brought it up that he wasn't so good to work with.
Oh my God. I remember like after gigs and stuff, like if we had any, like backstage parties or like, I remember just having such a great time at the House of Blues in Chicago, because there was a big room connected to the venue, which was part of the building and part of the House of Blues. So all the backstage peoples and people from the audience that were lucky enough to get in there, and then everybody was back there. And I'd be like, I'd connect with a girl and I'd be talking to her and stuff, and like I'd literally be just like in the middle of saying hello, or whatever. And, I'm like, we're eye to eye, we're right in front of each other. And Simon would come and walk right in front of me and go, "Hello, I'm Simon." And I just remember like looking like this past his shoulder, looking at her going, "Do you believe that shit?" Like, I mean, like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
The cock blocker.
Full on. Full on.
Wow. Whoa. Okay. So it's like that.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, dude. You're Simon Le Bon. Go. You can go have anything.
Yeah, I know. Do you mind if I just have like maybe one? Can I just have one?
Wow. Oh man. Well, this has been awesome talking to you, man.
Oh,
I remember that I met you the first time I actually played with you. We were playing out the Brass Elephant.
Yes. Oh God, yeah.
With Bobby Williams, another fellow who's passed away. But I just remember. I've told this story on a different episode actually, but I remember the first time I played with you, the whole first set, it's the first set. There are not many people in the club. And, you're playing everything, just pretty much pocket stuff at a decent volume. And I was like, that's cool, but like, where's this Joe Travers that I've heard so much about, you know? And then like the last song, I don't even remember what it was, but you just opened up and like, just, you know, blew some chops. And I was like, oh, there he is. I'm like, oh, it's like that. Like this dude is badass. And you're just an absolutely amazing drummer. And I've always had a great time playing with you. Are you, well, I guess no one's playing anywhere, but you're still doing the Ponchos gig if the clubs ever open up?
At the time that everything kind of grinded to a halt, I was doing Tuesday nights at the Whiskey A Go-Go with the Ultimate Jam Night. I'm the house drummer for that.
Oh, right.
And then I was the first call for the Ponchos on Fridays and Saturdays with Eric Dover and Jim Wheeler and Coco Powell. Yeah. And sometimes Walter Eno, depending on schedules.
Right. Who I'm interviewing on Thursday. He'll be on not this week, but next week.
I love Walter. He's such a sweetheart and another talented cat, you know, another amazing musician. Yeah. So that was like the two steadies. And then, you know, we had a tour. The Zappa band was supposed to be opening up for King Crimson in the summertime, and that completely got postponed. And we still don't know whether or not or when that's going to be rescheduled, you know.
Right.
Hopefully it will be, but you know, you just don't have any idea. So yeah, we're in a holding pattern. But yeah, it was weird because I was so used to like, you know, grinding away on the day job, and then at night, you know, going and gigging and stuff like that. And then now it's like all of a sudden I've got all this extra time. Like, whoa, I don't have any extra money, but I've got all this extra time.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I mean, at first I was really loving it because, like I said, I was touring really hardcore. So for the first even 2 months, I was like, oh, this break is awesome. But man, like maybe 6 weeks ago, I just hit a wall of like, I gotta get out and I gotta play. This is the longest in 30 years that I've gone without playing a gig.
It's really crazy. I hope that, you know, things will obviously change. And I mean, it might not be changing anytime soon, but I do hope that when it does change that it'll, like we said, people will still be able to appreciate what, you know, we have to offer as live musicians, and the industry will kind of come back around and people will want to tour again and, you know, and just do music.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope we get to do some music when it all starts up again. And
yeah, I was going to say, I was really happy that I had the chance to record that record with what is it, Waiting for Monday?
Yeah, Waiting for Monday.
Yeah, you guys sound so good, man.
Oh, you know, man. That was a fun record. And then we did that gig at the Whiskey and yeah, that was really fun. Yeah, I forgot about that too. We do all kinds of stuff together. We don't just don't even
vocally, that band is really strong. I mean, between you and
August.
Yeah. And Rudy, I mean, it's just like, holy shit, man. You guys are just like, woo, come on.
Yeah.
You know? It's great.
and Walter.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty insane. It's cool. Yeah. Well, hopefully there'll be gigs to be had eventually, and we'll do it all again, you know?
Yeah. Well, good luck with all the podcast stuff. And I'm glad you're being proactive and keeping busy and interacting with your fellow musicians and, you know, keeping things happening, you know, just like generating awareness. It's great.
Yeah. And showcasing people that I really respect. And you know, it's good to, like you say, just keep in touch and be able to talk to people because it's so isolating, you know, being out here in pandemic land. Yes. But
I appreciate you wanting to have me on.
Well, thanks so much for doing it, man. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.
Flood to the clubs, not flub to the clubs. I don't know what I was talking about. Man, I hope you got a lot out of that. That was so fun. I loved what he was talking about demo tapes because it's a subject I kind of forget about because now everything's online and it's a kind of a different world. But I'll try to put my first Los Angeles demo tape on YouTube so you can hear it, just in case anyone's interested. I haven't heard it in years, so I'm not sure if it will even hold up. But y'all listeners can be the judge of that and let me know. it was always an interesting conversation to have amongst musicians about like what form of demo they used to use, because some people would insist that you need one in like a cassette or a CD, and others would insist that you don't, and you just sit in and have a business card, and there's always a danger of over promoting yourself for sure, but it's also always good to have something just in case to put in somebody's hand, like something that you can just take with you. Because you get in your car and you throw it there, and then maybe even a week later you're like, what is this? Who is this? And you come back to it. Obviously now everything's on the web, so it's good to have a business card with contact info and links to, a website or YouTube or whatever you use, SoundCloud. I've also done postcard size stuff, which, sticks out a little bit more and depends on the event that you're going to. Like if you go to NAMM, that's people have bags there anyways, so something a little bigger is kind of acceptable. And you don't always have to hand them out either, but you should always have them, so just in case you need to. So, you don't want to overdo it, but it's always good to have in case someone asks. And video right now, obviously, is super vital. So Joe was way ahead of the game, and that's pretty cool. The last few gigs I've gotten, they've asked to send links to video as well as audio. So obviously you got to have something. And if you have any innovative ideas on the subject or something that you do different, feel free to reach out and let me know, and maybe we can have this discussion on the show again. One other thing I'll say about it too is that it's really grueling and not fun for me anyways. Like, it is the most awful part about getting gigs and stuff is the schmoozing and the meeting people. And I like meeting people, but I don't like forcing myself on to people and handing them a demo and saying, this is who I am and please give me a gig. It's excruciating. But one of the things that when I first got out here that I would just force myself to do is to just show up. Because, around 8:00 and I'm starting to think, okay, these are the clubs I need to hit and the people, and I'd be tired and I just wouldn't want to go, but I would just, just go. Even if you don't shake anybody's hand, just sit at the bar, because you never know what'll happen, and at least you're going to get a good performance. So anyways, that's my advice, because I know it's grueling and it's awful, and I hated it. And now I know what it's like from the other side when people come up to me and hand me demos, and, that's not super fun either. But at the same time, I understand, and, be nice. Meeting nice people is always great. And as a bass player, if I'm meeting bass players, I need subs, so it's grueling and awful, and it is for everybody, but it'll usually pay off. According to the internet, Frank Zappa made 62 albums before he died. And the Zappa Family Trust has released 55 since his death, thanks largely to Joe Travers. Danny Serafin is the original drummer for Chicago. Dweezil Zappa was an MTV VJ for 12 weeks before getting fired for saying some not so nice things about MTV on the Howard Stern Show. Razorblade editing is how editing was done before computers and involves the actual cutting and taping back together of reel-to-reel tape. It's incredibly tedious, and like Joe said, there's an art to it. Cutting together things in time is challenging, and there's like no undo button. So it takes a massive amount of skill and experience to edit with the precision that it would take to get Frank Zappa's music right. I can't even imagine. Stems, for those of you that don't know, are submixes of a larger mix that, when played together in equal volume, will exactly recreate the full mix. You might get all the guitars on a stem or background vocals or strings, etc. Nick Rhodes is 58 years old, and Frank Zappa's wife's name is Gail, and he has 4 kids, Dweezil, Ahmet, Moon Unit, and Diva. And maybe that will take care of some of the names that we talked about on this episode that you may or may not know. Well, I hope you had a good time. I'm a dive-bar rock star. Wow, you've made it to the end. I'm hoping it's because you completely enjoyed yourself and are now filled with knowledge and inspiration to move forward with your dreams. If that is the case and you would like to stay informed of new episodes, live events, and general news, please go to divebarrockstar.com and sign up for the mailing list. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, or complaints about anything you hear on the show, please email me at fanmail@divebarrockstar.com, and you may even end up on the show. We at the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, with all of our hearts, thank you for listening, and remember, it's all about dreams.